We are doing some important work today to get ready for the mock trial. We're going to start by building our criteria for effective revolutions. The entire project is deciding whether or not your revolution was effective. So we got to figure out what that means. What does it mean for a revolution to be effective? This is my revolutions project, where students put a revolution on trial for its effectiveness in helping the citizens of the country. The driving question was, how can we as lawyers determine the effectiveness of a revolution? You said functional means clear decision making, a balance of power, reasonable laws and fair justice, and that your society is self-sustaining. What do you currently have? What do you need? Talk about it. The entry event for this project is one of my favorites. It's a week-long simulation where students are put into a society that is incredibly unfair and dysfunctional and are asked to create a fair and functional society.
For the salary thing, we decided to change that. The peasants will be paid $3.
So you're saying that you're taking taxes from everyone, right? $1,
Yeah.
but we earn $1, so like.
So they're put in different social classes where they have different jobs and roles and very different rates of pay and privileges. And then throughout the simulation, they then on their own have to create what they think is a fair and functional society. After we've learned kind of the basic framework of how revolutions work and why they start, they learn about the conditions, beliefs, and triggers that start revolutions.
The conditions were like, people are immigrants and they're like being thrown out of the U.S.
Mm-hmm. And they start to do some research into the revolution of their choice. So they chose a revolution that they were interested in, and I put them in groups, and then they start to get some background knowledge about that revolution. You might be more confused now than you were before you read it. That's okay. We're just trying to build our background knowledge and figure out what was going on in this revolution using these primary sources. 5 minutes of academic conversation, and go.
He was the general, so like he had a lot of power, right? And he was against Madero, and so what he did is he joined like Pancho Villa and them, and he used his power to overthrow the president and basically the whole government, right?
So they look into some secondary sources that kind of summarize the whole revolution, and then they start to get more in depth into some primary sources, so witness accounts, speeches by the revolutionary leaders, and that's before they know if they're defending or prosecuting the revolution. So it's kind of getting the whole picture of what happened before I assign them a side. Okay, you guys are going to be defending the Cuban Revolution and saying it did help the people. You guys are going to be prosecuting the Cuban Revolution and saying it did not help the people. As soon as I assign them a side in the revolution, they then know who their mock trial teams are going to be.
The revolution wasn't effective because it didn't make fair laws.
I just want you guys to take into consideration our nation was in poverty, and all the people that couldn't afford to support themselves have to work, and they weren't getting paid the amount they needed to buy food.
It says the slaves who came enter national territory, they got like the act with them, so they were able to like live freely.
Does that sound like a fair laws and government and people being benefited? No. If you're in civil war for 10 years?
No.
So as a team, they look through all of the evidence that they've found throughout their research, and they start to identify what are the strongest pieces of evidence that will support their side, and then they use that evidence to create their argument. And then they use that argument to begin to build their case. Che Guevara once said, "True revolutionaries are guided by feelings of great love." What do you think that quote means? What does this tell you about how he felt about revolutions and their leaders? Based on what you know about revolutions, do you agree with that quote? 2 minutes to silently read and write. Go. So throughout the project, I focus a lot on the Common Core standards of reading and writing. The biggest writing standards for the 10th grade are around argumentation and their argumentative writing, so creating a strong argument that they can support with evidence. They do that in their timed writing that we do about midway through the project, and then also in the actual mock trials. So it's all about creating a strong argument that they can support with relevant evidence.
Your Honor, people of the jury, in 1959, the Cuban Revolution, led by Fidel Castro, overthrew President Batista and went on to change the history of Cuba.
As soon as they finished the timed writing, where I made sure that they understood the revolution and their side, I then showed them the structure of the trial. So we looked at a whole bunch of videos of trials from movies and some student mock trials from other schools so they could see what do lawyers do, how do lawyers act, how do witnesses act when they're on the witness stand.
You were there, I assumed you saw many horrendous things. Am I correct in assuming that?
They also interviewed some actual lawyers on FaceTime to talk about what do you do to prepare for a case, what do the different parts of a trial look like, and then I gave them an outline that showed the whole parts of the trial. From there, they then decided as a group who they thought their strongest lawyers would be and witnesses, and they decided on those roles on their own.
What differences do you see before and after the revolution?
Like before, we couldn't even get married without permission.
And then we started practicing. They practiced first just within their own team to get some feedback, and then we did some fishbowl practicing where they practiced for another team.
Your claims were clear, they're relevant, but you shouldn't argue with your lawyer because you guys are a team. You should act like one.
And the person who had their same role but on a different revolution gave them feedback using the rubric that they had created as a class. Court is now in session. We'll begin with the trial of the Haitian Revolution, in which we will be considering the case of, was the Haitian Revolution guilty or innocent of harming its people?
The Haitian Revolution is the only successful slave revolution in history. It's also the first black independent state.
And how would you say the conditions of the economy was after the revolution?
I felt that the economy is worsening because of the law.
So on the final presentation, they got up on the stage in our community room. The prosecution was on one side and the defense on the other. We had an audience of another class from our school and another teacher that helped me make up the jury. They started with their opening statements on each side. I then swore in the witnesses and they began their questioning. So each side questioned their own witnesses and then they had a cross-examination. And then they ended with the closing arguments for each team before the jury announced the verdict.
We're free, resilient. We have power for ourselves. We have rights.
One of the biggest benefits to having students learn about revolutions through a mock trial is that it forces them to see both sides of the issue. And I think that traditionally when you learn about something, there's always bias involved. But when they have to argue the other side or respond to arguments about the other side, they see that revolutions affect different people in different ways. So it kind of forces teenagers that don't often see other people's perspectives to see an issue from both sides and realize how complicated things are.